Hi, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame. So, welcome, and especially welcome to the new posters who have been adding themselves to the Candid Frame Flickr group here. It's great to have you. We're getting some wonderful images being submitted every day, and I'm really excited at having the chance to take a look at them. I encourage you to make comments at some of the other pictures that are being posted here. Not just a star to indicate you like it, but why you like it. I think that's a big part of what we can help create here on this Flickr page, beyond just giving a nice thumbs up and saying great shot. I'm trying to be as thoughtful as I can in the brief time that I have with each image to discuss what I like about it and what makes it strong. And I think the photographers that are contributing here would like to hear that from you as well. So when I was thinking about what to talk about this morning about the photographs, I'm always trying to relate it to stuff that I do, because I think it helps me to sort of laser my focus in terms of what I want to say. And I photograph a lot of strangers. I'm actually writing an ebook on photographing strangers. And when I think about the people that I photograph, I'm often drawn to characters. So I thought that would be the theme of the video for today is photographing characters. And I picked some images that I found on the Flickr group that kind of exemplified that were the kind of people I might even want to photograph, but also to talk about how each photographer approached their subject. So we're going to start off with this image by Robert Fisher. Now you take a look at this photograph, and this person has a lot of character. Robert, I recently profiled on the Candid Frame webpage in the listener profile a couple of weeks ago. So take a look at his work. But one of the things that I think is really important when you're photographing somebody that has character or has a really distinctive look or personality is to sort of have a point of view. Simply pointing a camera at a subject and thinking that the person itself is going to really make the whole photograph without you actually infusing your own point of view and your own sensibility into the image is not always going to turn out into a great photograph. And what I like about what Robert did in this shot is that he not only had a very interesting subject here, but he really took control of what he was doing with the camera, with lighting, and said, I don't just want to make a snap of this person. I want to create my own interpretation of how I experience this person and make a shot that sort of elevates this person's look from the way they put this, rubber headpiece on, and this sort of like scarf with the crucifix or the cross on their chest, and their makeup. He does it by taking what appears to be like maybe a window behind the subject, and actually maybe a curtain, and splitting it into a light and dark. And it's really neat because this dark area here is served in contrast by the bright area of the face. And this area that would be relegated to shadow has this white area that allows this stuff to come out in relief. If this background were flipped, then we might lose a lot of the detail or the separation between the subject and the background. So that's great use of lighting, because right here we're getting some sort of split lighting, except for this little spot of light that we might be getting from a flashlight or something like that. But it makes for an effective portrait, and really kind of elevates it from beyond just making a quick snap of a person. And this is kind of what I'm kind of looking for. I'm always trying to infuse myself into the portrait, because a portrait is not so much just about the subject. It's also about the photographer. And if you don't take that step of putting yourself into your pictures, it just ends up looking at everything else that's out there. Here's a shot by RG. It says Black Hat outside of the St. Cecil Flower Festival. And, you look at this guy and the beard, the hat, the glasses, the coat, and the cigarette sticking out of his mouth. It's just great. And this is kind of the kind of stuff that I typically will shoot, just finding subjects when I'm walking around. And a festival is if you have any interest in photographing people, photographing strangers, going to a festival is one of the easier ways of approaching people, because, to be quite frank, that's where people go to be seen. And approaching a stranger there to make their photograph sort of helps grease the wheels, as opposed to just bumping into someone on the sidewalk. But here, we don't have as much control as the previous shot. But RG uses the capabilities of the camera, specifically the ability to throw the background very much out of focus to bring the subject into sharp relief. It seems to be using a 50mm lens on a Canon EOS 6D at an aperture of 2.8. So that 2.8 aperture allows him to stand out and eliminates all this distraction, because the background isn't really a great background. It's a bunch of cars in a parking lot, some trees, and a building. So we really don't want to see that stuff in sharp detail. We want to emphasize the subject, and simply by controlling the depth of field, RG here is able to make a really nice portrait of the subject. And the light on him is great. You got a little edge lighting on the face, but the highlights aren't blown at all. And almost immediately when I saw this picture as the thumbnail, I just wanted to see it big, because it just seemed like this guy is a great photographic subject. And sometimes that's all you have access to, is your control of the depth of field. You may not have control over the lighting or the background, so you really have to think to yourself, okay, how can I use the controls that I have on my camera to emphasize my subject? If you're using a camera in program mode, you're leaving too much of the decision making to the camera. And so by using a mode like aperture priority mode, you're going to be able to make those choices to isolate your subject. Here's a portrait by John McLaughlin. And this is just a beautiful portrait that looks to have been made largely with window light. He was using a Nikon D300 at 48 millimeters, so it looks like he may have been using a zoom lens or kit lens, aperture 1/25 of a second, 5.6. So, again, using just the basic controls of the camera, you're able to get really a sharp picture. Here again is in an image I wouldn't depend on program to get right. I'd be using aperture priority or manual mode, because I want to make sure that every part of his face is sharp. If the camera had gone with a wider aperture like in the previous picture, then if we focused on the eye, the nose, the mouth, might have been out of focus. You can see here that the right eye is slightly out of focus, but if the camera had focused on, say, the tip of the nose, and you were using a really wide aperture, the eye would be soft. So you'd get soft here, sharpness here, maybe sharpness here, and softness here, and that's not what you want. This face is a great face. So you want to make sure that this entire face is as sharp as possible. So again, you have to take control of your camera. And choosing an aperture of 5.6 under these lighting conditions is really, really good. He's using window light, which is a great quality of light to use, and he makes a great move here by having the subject facing into the light. The background seems to have been nothing more than a black wall, but because you get this great lighting all over the face and on the sweatshirt or sweat top that he's wearing, you get this great separation. This might have worked just as well with a white wall, but I think I like the black wall or the dark wall because it really helps to emphasize the face. And one of the things here, in order to maintain this shutter speed of 1/25 of a second, is ISO is at 250. So when you're using window light, using it at ISO 100 may not be the best move, because if he were using it at ISO 100, the shutter speed would have been more likely 1/60th of a second, which, if you're hand holding, can be really difficult to hand hold. It's probably the bare minimum shutter speed that you should be using with a 50 millimeter, or in this case, a 48 millimeter equivalent focal length. You don't want to drop to shutter speeds of 60th of a second or lower when you're doing a portrait, especially when you're hand holding. That camera shake is usually the number one reason why pictures are ruined, because it adds some softness to the image, and there's no degree of sharpening in Photoshop or in Lightroom that you can do to make the picture better. But this is a great use of light. And in this case, the photographer is not only using the controls of the camera, but using his awareness of the light and the background to make a really good portrait of a great character. Here's a shot by Ugo Say, and he has a great story. He was this is a guy who's a bookshop owner, and he had walked by this bookshop many times, and had spotted this fellow, and finally got his courage up to go into the store and ask the guy to make this portrait. And at first, the man was rather reluctant, but eventually he agreed to it, and Ugo made this shot. And this is I think is a really good example of an environmental portrait. You have those elements in the background, the books on the shelves, the pictures on the wall, that give us some insight into who this man is. And then you got the pipe and the glasses and the gesture of the hand on the pipe and the turtleneck sweater. And it's just a wonderful shot. Even though he isn't directly looking at the camera, you get a sense of the man, which I think is really, really nice. If he's a bookshop owner, I would love to have seen him in a space where we see more of the store. In an environmental portrait, your subject doesn't have to dominate the frame like he does here. The space itself can become a character. We get a hint of that here, but another version of this shot might include him standing with all the shelves behind him and all those books stacked up behind him. In that case, we would get even more of a sense about the space that he inhabits, and it would tell us a lot about him. But even as the shot is right now, I love the shot, and I especially love the expression and that hand on the pipe. That little gesture really makes the shot. It feels like he's really, very comfortable in his own space. Now, this shot was made by Harvey Fish, and it looks like it was done of a street performer, and in Europe by the looks of it. And you look at this guy, and you know he's a character. You see the expression on the face. You see the buttons, the what looks to be a juggling ball right beneath his neck. Oh, it's actually a nose. It's actually a nose that he would put on his a little clown nose that he would put on his own nose, and the outfit, and you can just get the sense that there is something really going on here. And even though this isn't a formal portrait, it captures a great moment that really reveals this person as a character. So many people, when they go on vacation and they see a street performer, they're always taking a picture from a fair distance away. So they get the person doing their shtick, and then the people around them, gazing at them and taking in the entertainment. But the choice to get in tight with what looks to be like a moderate or a long telephoto lens, and really focusing on that expression and that gesture of the hand, really tells us a lot about who this guy is. So I love it that this choice was made to disregard everything that's happening in the background in terms of the crowd, including someone in the foreground and the background, to help establish an idea in terms of what's going on, but then focusing on the face, the expression, and the moment. And that's great, because this shot, in just that one frame, tells us so much about who this guy is, at least when he's performing. There's so much energy, there's so much humor, there's so much joy that's happening in this moment that the shot can't help but be really, really captivating. Here is a portrait by Adam Garelick, and this is like 180 to the shot I just showed, where this guy is being very boisterous. Here's this fellow who is just sort of present in the shot. And Adam shot it with a Leica M9, 1/80th of a second, 3.4 ISO 200. So, the shutter speed's good, and the aperture here is really key, because again, he's throwing the background out of focus. It's a city street. It's in New York, in Soho. So, New York streets are notorious for being fairly busy with the backgrounds, with people. But here, he blurs the background by using that wide aperture and just emphasizes the face and the body and the clothes and the hat. And you really kind of take this guy in. Compared to the expression of the other one, and this guy just seems like he's just staring, excuse me, just staring blankly into the camera. But I think there's so much more here. There's an intensity that's happening as he stares into the lens, and there's a presence there. The clothes, yeah, they establish a sense of character, but it's the intense look in the eyes that really sort of elevates this shot. And it seems like the photographer is there with the subject, and the subject can take the place of the photographer, as if he's looking at this person and taking them in and feeling like there's a connection there. And I think that definitely is there. Does the photographer have particularly dramatic lighting? No. Does he have much control over the environment? No. But what he does is, by his framing and his use of a depth of field, he helps to say, this is what I find interesting about this subject. And my choice of focal length, my choice of aperture, by my choice of framing, I'm able to show my viewers what I consider, what drew me to this person in the first place, what I found interesting about them. And that's why I think this picture is really, really good. Here's a real beautiful shot by Egimba, and it's two men. Doesn't indicate exactly where it was shot, but it's a beautiful black and white. I mean, their features, their expressions, the tones of their skin against their white outfits are just fantastic. He was using a Nikon D800, shutter speed of 250, aperture of 5.6, and ISO of 800. The ISO of 800 is important because it seems to be that he wasn't out in direct sunlight. He may have been under a canopy or something where the light was reduced, and so increasing that ISO to 800 was really critical to being able to maintain that shutter speed of 250th of a second. If he had been using an ISO of 100, that would have been 3 stops less. So that 1/250th of a second would have been 1/30th of a second, which would have been way too slow to handhold, and the subject here in the foreground would not have been as sharp as they could be, particularly since they were using the 92 millimeter equivalent focal length. The exposure is really spot on. The background, the sky gets blown out, but because this is a black and white, it doesn't really ruin the image, and it actually creates a nice separation here between the heads of these figures and the background. And again, it's just using aperture priority and your composition to make the shot work. I'm not sure whether I really love this arm sort of sticking out of this person's head. Maybe a slight shift to your right might have created a separation to more clearly indicate that is this person's arm. But that's a minor quibble. I still think it's a really, really good photograph. And just like the previous shot, there's an intensity to the way that they're looking at the camera and looking at the photographer. It's a beautiful, beautiful shot. Obviously, it was shot in color, and the photographer made the choice to convert it to black and white because maybe the colors were distracting. But again, that's another choice that the photographer is making in order to convey how they felt and experienced the subject when they made the photograph. In most of these images, you're not seeing a lot of heavy Photoshop work in these images. It's pretty straightforward. It's all happening within the camera. I know a lot of portraiture is being massaged in Photoshop and other applications and filters, and I use them a lot myself, but there's something to be said for making it happen in the camera. Here's this last image, which I really love, by Lisa O. She shot it back in the 70s on film, and I may have talked about this in a previous video, but when I was thinking about the subject of character, I fell upon this image, and I couldn't help but talk about it again. It's just a beautiful shot. It's this family on a street in New York, and the warmth, the love that's being felt by this family is just wonderful. You get a great sense of place here. I mean, immediately it's New York, and it's not 2014. It's a little before that, but you take a look at this family, the father with the afro and the glasses, and then the mother with the scarf and the knit hat and the umbrella, and then you got that kid with that balloon wrapped around around their wrist in those glasses, looking up into the distance as if he's totally ignoring the photographer entirely. And it's just an intimate, warm moment. These people are characters, but they're a family. And when you look at this image, or at least when I look at this image, it gives me a fondness for them, and it gives me, takes me back to my own days as a kid and being with my own parents. It's a wonderful, magical image. I don't have any specs because it was shot on film, but it looks to have been shot with a square format camera, shot on film, and it's just a beautiful shot. And I think it really is a great example of what a character photo can be. It doesn't just have to be of an individual. It can be of a group of people, and in this case, a family. So I really enjoyed looking through all those photographs. Please keep submitting photographs to the Candid Frame Flickr group here. And if you are turning on to this video and you haven't yet, join today. There's no cost. It's completely free. It's Flickr. And just start dialoguing and comment on other people's photographs. It's really it's a real fun part of being part of this group. If you're liking what you're seeing on these videos, please subscribe and tell a friend about it. And if you are listening to this video and you've never listened to the Candid Frame, then you're missing out on some great conversations with some wonderful photographers. You can find us at thecandidframe.com, and every week on Sunday I release a new interview with an established and emerging photographer, many of whom you may have never heard of, but who are creating some exceptional work. So I'll see you next time.